Olight S1 Mini Baton. This is another of the Olights that I've been looking forward to since I heard it was coming out a few months ago, because for a while I've been carrying the S1R Baton, which by all rights is a pretty small light, and they took that light and they made it even smaller and came out with the S1 Baton, which is just a crazy small light. You can see it in my hand there. This light can get lost in your pocket. It's so small and you might forget to take it out of your pocket at the end of the day because it is just so small, but puts out either 450 or 600 lumens depending on the model. Price-wise, it goes for $49.95, and as I just mentioned, it does come in two different options. There is an HCRI, High Color Rendering Index version, which is this one right here. It says so right there on the light. And then there's a cool white. The difference between the two of those, if you're not familiar with HCRI lights, the high coloring index lights, the bulbs, they put out a more neutral daylight type light. So that if you're doing something where you want the colors of what you're looking at to be more truly represented, you want to use an HCRI light. The cool white bulbs will put out just a slight, I don't want to use the word blue, but on the spectrum, the Kelvin spectrum, a slight bluer tint to the light. The Kelvin ratings on these, the HCRI puts out 5500 Kelvin and the cool white is 6500. The HCRI has a 90 on the color rendering index, 100 is the maximum, and the cool white is a 70 on the color rendering index. Also, the HCRI light is a little bit dimmer, 450 lumens versus 600 on the cool white. Cooler bulbs in general will both look a little bit brighter, and in this case it is a little bit brighter. Couldn't you tell the difference between 450 and 600? I don't have them both to compare, obviously, I just have the one. But you have to get a pretty good difference to be able to tell much of a difference. Although 150 lumens, I suspect there probably is a little bit of a brightness difference between the 450 and the 600. The runtimes, though, are pretty much identical, so you're not really losing much there. I thought maybe I would gain some runtime with the dimmer light, but not the case. They both have about the same runtimes. So let me show you the box here, kind of standard box. Goes through some stuff here, goes through some of the runtimes and the brightnesses, IPX8 rated. A couple things that come in the box with this. You get a lanyard and a charging cable, micro USB charging cable, which plugs into the battery. This is one of the lights that charges the battery itself, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And then you get some instruction manuals, and always make sure you take out the little battery cover when you get the light. It's a little instruction thing here that says that otherwise the light is not going to work, so make sure you take that out. This battery runs on a CR123, and as I mentioned, it is rechargeable. And in this case, the battery itself is rechargeable. You take off the tail cap here, comes with the battery, and there's that port right there to plug in that micro USB. When it's charging, there's a little light right here which will show red when it's still charging, turns green when it's fully charged. You just need to plug the other end of this into an adapter. Tons of adapters. I know I've got a bunch of them otherwise. And then here's the light. It's an Olight, 650 milliamp hour, 3.7 volt. And it goes down there. There's a spring down on that end. And then you put this back on. There's an O-ring there to help with that IPX8 rating. Screw that back there. The tail cap is magnetic. So if you want to stick this onto something, the hood of your car, wherever you're working, it will stick to that and provide you some nice light that way. The body of this light, they've done some interesting texturing on this compared to the old lights that had that standard type knurling. On this, they have this more weave kind of pattern, and I like it. It both looks nicer, it provides good grip. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's a nice change, but it's a nice change. I like the look of it, I like the feel of it, it's very comfortable in your hand. On the side of the light, there is the name and the serial number, S1 Baton Mini. On the other side, the Olight logo. And then this pocket clip is their new pocket clip. I like it much better than the old pocket clips, which I complained about in every video, both because the old pocket clips, this little piece right here would sometimes get stuck when you're trying to push it past this. And then this little nib that's stuck down in here, if you're putting it into thicker pants, that always got stuck and made it hard to fit them in. So this new pocket clip is bi-directional, so you can put it into pants or whatever you're putting it into from this side, or you can put it in from this side. So that means you can either carry it tip up in your pocket, you can carry it tip down in your pocket. This is also useful because you can put this onto a hat, the bill of a hat, and then you can use this as a headlamp. So lots of features for this pocket clip. On the pocket clip, right up on the front here is where the lanyard goes in, up by the head there. And the pocket clip can only go in one way. You can see there is this little indentation in the body of the light where the pocket clip goes into. So the pocket clip is always going to be head up. The lanyard is always going to be on the head end of the light. The other nice thing about having this pocket clip fixed like this is that the button of the light is always directly opposite of the pocket clip. On some of them like these where the pocket clip can move around, I always had to try and figure out where the button was, and sometimes the button, because it's so smooth, you might miss it. On this one, it's very easy to remember, okay, you hold the light like this in your hand, clip down, and the button is always going to be right on the other side. The head there, it has a TIR lens, total internal reflection lens, similar to the one on the S1 Baton. And then the other thing that this has, which is I think is kind of nifty, is that on that blue ring, Olight likes their blue rings on them. But on this one, they've put the brightness of it, you can see right there, 450 lumens, and then also the color rendering index, 550 Kelvin, CRI of 90. That's just kind of a nice little touch, I like that. Aside from that, these TIR lenses, this puts out a nice diffuse floody beam. On the box here, this says that it will throw 70 meters. That is kind of it's not a real useful distance. The way I get useful distances for lights, and I get yelled at in the comments if I don't explain this in every video, if I don't show my math. The way I get the useful distance of a light as a rough estimate is I take the meters and simply change the unit. No math involved. So 70 meters becomes 70 feet, and that's a more realistic distance, of a useful distance of what you're going to be lighting up things with the lights. You're not going to be realistically taking this light and lighting up something almost a football field away, because it's just not designed for that. So useful distance for this light, around 70 feet, give or take maybe just a little bit farther, but that's kind of a ballpark anyway. This does come with that rechargeable battery. You can also use regular CR123s if you like. And like I was showing before, the size of this is not much bigger than the battery itself. And comparing it to some other lights, here it is compared to that S1 Baton. Here it is compared to the EagleTech D25C, which I carried a lot. And for the heck of it, smaller but longer, Through Night TI AAA light. So you can see just how crazy short this light is. And like I said, because it's so small, you just need to remember to take it out of your pocket or wherever you have it at the end of the day. Moving on to the user interface. First thing I want to talk about is that this light has a lockout mode. One of the things that I had happen with this light a couple times is I would carry it in my pocket, and because the button is just pretty easy to push, if you bent in the right way and the fabric from your pants might accidentally push the button, and I had it come on in my pocket a few times. So these lights have a lockout mode, and the way you get to that is you just hold the side button down, goes on, goes back off, and it's now locked out. And initially, before I really started looking at it, I thought, well, I don't want to not be able to use the light. I want to have quick access to it, but here's how quick the lockout mode turns off. Hold it down, and it's back on. And then you can just go back through the brightnesses. So quick into the lockout mode, it's protected in your pocket, and then when you need to turn the light back on, you hold it down, and you're back on. So there's really no good reason to not lock it out. This is not a tactical light, obviously, by any means. This is a general everyday use kind of light. So there's going to be less emergency uses for this that you need it right now. So the lockout mode is pretty useful and very easy to use, very quick, very easy to get to. So I like that nice user interface touch there. Now, once you get the lockout mode, once you get past that, all the functions are done by this side button here. You long press it and it will go into the moonlight mode. And then to get through the different modes, you just hold it down and it will cycle through low, medium, high. And then to get to the turbo, you just double click, goes into the turbo, triple click from any brightness, goes into the strobe, and back off. It does have mode memory. It will remember moonlight mode, low and medium indefinitely, and then the high and the turbo it remembers for about 10 minutes and then just reverts back to medium the next time you turn it on. It also has two timers, 3 and 9 minutes. And the way you get to the timers, let me turn it on, we'll get up just a little bit in the brightness here, is you click and hold. And if it flashes once, it's the 3 minutes. If it flashes twice, it's the 9 minutes. So click and hold. So that's the 3-minute timer. It will sit, and after 3 minutes, the light will turn off. To get to the 9-minute timer, you do the same thing again. Click and hold, click and hold. There's the 2 blinks, and now that's going to go for 9 minutes, and then it will shut off. And when you turn it off, you turn it back on, you're just back into the normal mode. Let me talk now about the run times, and I'm going to bring in this chart because like I mentioned before, The cool white and the HCRI have different brightnesses, same run times, but different brightnesses, and this way I can refer to these numbers as I'm talking about them. The way you get through the brightnesses is you long press it, comes onto that moonlight mode. They're both half a lumen and they will both go for 15 days on the moonlight mode. And then to change through the brightnesses, you just hold it down. So we'll go to the low. 15 lumens for the cool white, 12 lumens for the HCRI. You cannot tell the difference between those. Does both of those for 30 hours. Ramp up again. 60 lumens versus 50. Does both of those for 6 hours. Again, you cannot tell a difference in your eye between 50 and 60 lumens. Then you go up to 300 lumens or 250 lumens. It does both of those for an hour. And then to get to the turbo, double click, goes into that turbo, 600 lumens versus 450. It will do that for a minute. And then after a minute, it will ramp down to the high, 300 versus 250, and it will do that for another 55 minutes. After you hold it for a while on that turbo, the head can get a little bit warm. And that's part of the reason it ramps down, because this is a pretty small light to be pushing 450 or 600 lumens. It's already starting to get kind of warm just with this little bit of time that I've had it on for. And then it'll ramp down, let it cool down a little bit, and after it's cooled down, you can turn it back on and get back into that turbo mode again. But really, 250 or 300 lumens is plenty bright for most uses. Let's look at some brightnesses down here in my basement, starting first with that moonlight mode. The moonlight mode, when your eyes are adjusted, are great for checking out a lot of things actually, because it lasts for 30 days. You get forever out of it, and you can check out some things up close. And when your eyes are adjusted, you can see a ton of stuff with this. Going up into the low, again, still plenty bright for a lot of things. The medium, the high, and the turbo. I'd say it looks a little bit brighter in the video than it does in real life, but still, the idea here is that you can see this TIR lens puts out a nice broad beam. It's not a focused thrower. It's a nice broad beam at a reasonable, useful distance. I'd say my basement is maybe not quite 70 feet, so that estimate that I mentioned before, it probably does throw farther than 70 feet, but probably not realistically a football field. It does start to get a little bit warm after I've had it on for a while here, but you can see, again, just puts out that nice broad beam. And realistically, you don't need the turbo for most of them. One of these other lower brightnesses are plenty bright for a lot of things that you're going to be using it for. There's the strobe. Final thoughts on this light. Like I said before, I have been waiting for them to come out with this light for a while for several reasons, both because of the new pocket clip, which I love because it's so functional, and because this light is just so darn small and puts out 450 or 600 lumens. This is not a tactical thrower, but as an everyday light for just general use, this is perfect. Disappears in your pocket. It's nice and small. It's nice and bright. It's affordably priced at $50. And the user interface, some lights that have those complicated user interfaces that I pick up and I'm like, oh, how do I make this work again? But the Olights I find to be generally pretty straightforward. You long press it, then you hold it down and moves through the brightnesses. It's very easy to figure out or refigure out every time I pick up a new one. So another fantastic light from Olight. Check one out. Again, I'll put the link below. $50, the S1 Baton Mini.